month later and say, actually, there's a lot of cholesterol, but there's this special type of good cholesterol for you. And pretty much what happened was my dad got sick of that, and he said, screw it, I'm just going to eat eggs because I like eggs. But when we have this conflicting information, we respond with a certain amount of cynicism and a disconnect from it. And I think that that's exactly the wrong type of response we need to have to conflicting information. If it's an absolute truth, then sure, we should be probably cynical towards that and really question it hardly. But if we're dealing with profound truth, we need to learn how to rationalize these differences inside of ourselves. And paradox becomes really important because there's this sort of default definition of creativity that bubbles up all over the place. And it's that creativity is merging two incongruent ideas. So if you do that, you could sort of say that in a large part, creativity is about embracing paradox. So if you want to do creative work, if you want to speak to people that are illogical, to be creative, you need to embrace this sort of paradox. And the beauty of it is that when we're talking to people, these beautiful illogical people, when we make things, we can consider that the world and how we see it around us is malleable. We can choose how we interpret the things that go on around us. And I think one of the main ways that we make sense and interpret the world around us is through this little thing called story. When you go back to how Aristotle said, the second machine that he's building where things can be other than they are, it was how do we make decisions in that system? And it was a process that was called arguments, if I remember right. And basically, it wasn't fighting. It was projecting possible outcomes to certain decisions. That's a story. And I think that story is in our bones. It's how we make sense of things. When I come home, and let's say I'm having dinner with a friend, there's a question there, right? How was your day? And I tell them the story of how my day went. And in large part, that tells them a story about what happened to me. But maybe more importantly, by telling that story, I can actually frame what happened in that day and make a little bit more sense of it. Stories in our bones, and I've got a nice example of it. This is a painting by Edward Hopper. It's called Nighthawks, a quintessential American painting. And when you look at it, there's a couple really striking things. The first is sort of like, how did these people get in there, right? So there's no doors. How did these people get into this diner? And you start analyzing it, and there's definitely a setting, and there's a mood, and there's a tone to it. We've got characters. And the thing is, we respond to the quality of this. And we look at it, and we say, okay, so that guy's working, and I don't know, he's making, let's say, a milkshake for that couple over there. And that couple